Team 32 takes a 3-2 series lead with the 3-2 win in Colorado and a chance to close out the series at home. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where I might be losing my voice a little bit after live streaming this game, which if you joined, thank you very much for doing that. And a huge win for the Kraken, winning Game 5 3-2 in Colorado, and on Friday, they can win this in 6 at home. And what a Game 5 it was too from the Kraken, a full 60-minute effort battling back and forth with the defending champs to come out with this road win, their second already in this series. If there's anything struggling more than my voice right now, it might be my heart from the adrenaline that's been pumping through it for the last couple of hours or couple of days at this point. And for the Kraken, coming off of what was easily their best game of the series so far in Game 4, but still needing overtime to win it over the Avs with the Eberle game winner on the power play, this game in Game 5 was a very important one for them to win, not just because it allows them to get 2 shots now at winning the series outright in either Game 6 at home or, if necessary, Game 7, but also because due to his hit on McCann, which may very well have taken McCann out of the rest of this series, Makar was handed a 1-game suspension. And if Seattle was going to win this series, they needed to take advantage of the 1 game that he was going to miss here in Game 5. Even if maybe that should have been a 2-game suspension for Makar, and that's not just a homer take. You can ask pretty much anyone outside of Avalanche fans who are convinced that Makar only deserved the 2-minute penalty for it. Everybody that's a third party without a rooting interest for either of these teams pretty much agreed that probably should have been a 2-game suspension. He only gets 1, but the Kraken only needed that 1 game to take back the series lead. With their far and away leading goal scorer from the regular season missing, however, the Kraken were going to need some help from a new face as Tye Kartye gets called up into McCann's spot. And not only does he get called up, he gets his first NHL start on a line with Matty Beniers and Jordan Eberle in Game 5 of the postseason. And he might be the AHL Rookie of the Year, now on a line with the probable NHL Rookie of the Year and Jordan Eberle, who's far from being a rookie, but he did get Calder votes in his rookie season. He finished 15th, so far from winning behind guys like Jeff Skinner, who won it, PK Subban, and even Brad Marchand, as well as Sergei Bobrovsky. Still got those Calder votes, and I think we can safely call this the Rookie of the Year line for the Kraken, and it probably will stay together as long as McCann is out, as even in that big spot for his first NHL game, Kartye had a heck of a game. But we'll get into that in a little bit, because as we get into the game and the start of the first period, although the Kraken once again get the better start in this game, this time the Avs are able to keep the Kraken off of the board through the first 5 minutes, and then even through the first 20 minutes through a Kraken power play and a big press by the Kraken with a lot of momentum towards the end of this first period. The Avalanche do get a little bit of a press back right into the final minutes, and eventually they end up getting a power play of their own off of a tripping call on Schwartz, which was a trip, but kind of a soft call for the playoffs, and especially a game like this where, and we'll get to officiating a little bit more, they were letting a lot of things go. Still, it might have been a bit of a makeup for another borderline trip, as a few minutes earlier, Borgen and McKinnon had collided going for a puck in the neutral zone that was passed to McKinnon, who ends up on his face with the puck getting away from him into the Kraken end, where the Kraken end up getting it. So with that borderline call, which, especially with it being the playoffs, I didn't think was egregious for them to let go. Obviously, I can understand why Avalanche fans would be upset with it, and they certainly were. I guess this one kind of comes down to there's 2 borderline calls, so they end up calling the second one. And in the regular season, that probably does end up getting called. But for whatever reason, it might not be the best reason, but we know that the playoffs there tend to be less calls, especially on these borderline ones. And although I'm sure Avalanche fans in particular won't want to hear it after losing the game, there were some missed calls on both ends of the ice. Still, this was a much better officiated game than Game 4 was. The officials definitely not letting it get out of hand like they did in Game 4 on top of it. And besides, either way, this is still not a very good place for the Kraken to be in after having controlled this first period for the most part. Still with it scoreless, the Avalanche, with a minute of power play to end the period, have a chance to take that lead, even with how well the Kraken had played up until this point. Fortunately, Seattle's able to kill off this first minute of power play going into the intermission, and then finish the kill in the first half of the second period, without really even letting the Avalanche create much momentum out of it. Plus, a couple minutes later, the Kraken end up getting their second power play of the game, which is worse than the first one. It really doesn't go much of anywhere. In fact, I don't think they even got a shot on goal. Actually, no, I know they didn't get a shot on goal because the first shot on goal for either team in this second period doesn't come until after the 6-minute mark. As the Kraken get the puck down into the offensive end, Wennberg's fighting for it down along the boards, eventually winning that puck battle up to Schwartz, who fires off that first shot of the period. Georgiev makes the save though, but it bounces back out in front, and Geekie gets it through the 5-hole and puts it into the net to give the Kraken the first goal of the game for the 5th game in this series. All 5 of them, the Kraken scoring first. This time, they do have to wait through the entire first period and into the second to get that first goal, this being the first scoreless first period of the series. But they're still on the board first and tie the record set by the 1918 Toronto Arenas for the most consecutive games scoring first in a team's first playoff appearance. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's right. Either way, the Kraken have scored first in all 5 of these games. This time it comes in the second period, and I might have seemed more excited about that goal, and certainly would have seemed more excited about it on the stream when it happened, had I even realized it had gone in when it did. In fact, even after Geekie threw his hands up in the air and started skating away celebrating, I still wasn't sure that it had actually gone in until it got flung out of the net by, I think it was Byram. Honestly, I just thought Georgiev had saved it. He had his glove on the ice right where Geekie had been shoving at the puck, and didn't seem to know that the puck had gotten past him with his pads on the ice. But Geekie had managed to get it just under his right pad right before he could get it down, and sure enough, it's in the back of the net to give the Kraken that 1-0 lead. And for Geekie, managing to get that second goal of the playoffs, now only he and Schwartz, multiple goal scorers for the Kraken in this playoff series so far. For Geekie, also a good thing considering he had been robbed by the crossbar early on in the first period, both he and Tolvanen actually putting it off of Plumbing in that first period, Tolvanen putting it off of the post on the near side during the first Kraken power play. But good to see the Kraken finally get one after all of that effort in the first period, now to get one here in the second. Not even a minute and a half later, though, all of that work is undone as Grubauer... Grubauer. Oh, Phil. Come on, man. After having had a fantastic series up to this point, even in that game where he gives up 5 goals, as we talked about, it was really hard to put any of those solely on him. Really, the only one I felt like you could put partially on him was a fantastic highlight reel goal from McKinnon, who's probably one of the few players in the world that could even score that goal in the first place. And before it even gets to Grubauer, it requires a mistake from both Donato and Vince Dunn. But this one is all Grubauer from start to finish, as he leaves the Kraken net to go behind it so he can play a puck that's coming down along the boards, which goaltenders do, and it would have been perfectly fine here if he'd made one of 2 other possible decisions other than the one he ends up making. One, he's got Borgen right there in front of him. He can just pass it up to Borgen and start the breakout the other way, or he can even keep that puck going along the boards, speed it up a bit so it can get back out on the other side, where there's no Avalanche players coming in on that side that can take a shot off, and if anything, the Kraken can get it back in the neutral zone. But instead, he tries to force the puck right back up the other way, where Rantanen is waiting for it along the boards, so it goes past Borgen, right to Rantanen, who then fires off the shot right away at the net, and Grubauer's able to dive back just in time to get his glove partially on it, which, had McKinnon not also been coming in, would have made the desperate, save your own bacon type of save. Instead, though, it goes off of Grubauer's glove, off of McKinnon, and into the net to tie the game at 1. And we all know what we're going to hear from Steve Dangle on Thursday. If you're a goaltender, especially in Game 5 of a playoffs with a 1-goal lead, tend the goal! Now, that had to be said because, again, in the moment, it's a very costly goal for the Kraken, as it undoes all that they'd worked for up to this point, having worked hard to get that 1-0 lead, outplaying the Avalanche through the first almost half the game at this point, and just like that, one mistake from your goaltender, and the game's right back tied, and especially after how Game 2 went, and then how Game 4 went, even though the Kraken end up winning Game 4 with both of those cases, the Kraken outplaying the Avalanche, taking 2-0 leads, and then the Avalanche coming right back and either tying the game or taking the lead in regulation. The Kraken do end up winning Game 4, but they could have had the lead in that series already if they had just managed to hang on in Game 2. Once again, just like in both of those, the Kraken immediately let the Avalanche back into the game, even though they've been the better team to this point. Which, again, considering how this game started, with it being scoreless through the first period and then shotless through the first 6.5 minutes, this is one that really felt like every single goal was going to make a huge difference. And the later this game gets tied, as we saw in Game 2, the more and more you feel like that top end of the Avalanche is going to end up being the difference, and once again stealing a game from the Kraken. Thankfully, though, this would turn out to be a one-off from Grubauer, and not only does he not make another mistake anything like this, or really another mistake in the rest of the game, he doesn't even let this mistake shake his confidence, as he was fantastic through the back half of this game, and stayed in his net for pretty much all of that time. Meanwhile, back the other way, the Kraken bailed their goaltender out, not making him think too long about how he cost his team the lead, allowing the Avalanche to get that quick response goal to them getting the lead in the first place, as the Kraken take that lead back just over 2 minutes later. But before we get to how they end up doing that in the offensive end, this play all starts with what Avalanche fans are going to make the story of this game in the Kraken end of the ice. Okay, to be fair, not all Avalanche fans. There's plenty of reasonable ones out there. In fact, I'd say the vast majority of Avalanche fans are that way. But I can understand the frustration in the moment and why some fans will be thinking more with their emotions than with their brain following this game, and this play in particular, as play starts down in the Kraken end where MacKinnon has the puck down in the corner. Borgen's challenging him for the puck, but as Borgen makes a play for it, MacKinnon is able to shove Borgen off of it, and as Borgen's shoved off, with him kind of turning while it happens, he spins down, and while he's falling to the ground, his skates collide, or honestly just kind of bump into MacKinnon's skates. But with MacKinnon being fully on edge at this point, that bump is enough to force MacKinnon down and trip him up a bit. Which, honestly, I think it's pretty incidental contact here, and especially Avalanche fans, I'm sure, will think of that as a homer take, but there really isn't a whole lot. Yeah, Borgen's leg does swing out a fair amount as he's spinning to the ice, and that does hit MacKinnon's skate, which causes MacKinnon to fall. But it's a pretty borderline call, and again in the playoffs, and especially in a game where already at this point it's been established that the refs are letting a lot of these borderline things go, I think it's a pretty good non-call here. Even in the regular season, I'm not sure that this gets called. It is Nathan MacKinnon, and superstars do tend to draw calls, so maybe it would have been. Either way, what happens after it is all on MacKinnon. Because look, whether or not you think there should have been a call here, and from MacKinnon's perspective, I can understand the frustration. He doesn't see what happened at his feet. All he knows is that something hit his skate and he tripped while he had the puck. So I can understand why he thinks there should be a call, even if the contact was somewhat incidental. He has no way of knowing that in the moment. But even if you do think there should have been a call here, and MacKinnon clearly did, what you can absolutely not afford to have happen is to allow the fact that there isn't a call afterwards to distract you from the play still happening out in front of you. And if MacKinnon had kept with the play, he would have gotten to this puck first and kept it in the corner, probably no harm done. Instead, MacKinnon gets up, immediately throws his hands in the air as he looks to the ref, and that split second of him looking to the ref and throwing his hands in the air looking for the call, even though he does eventually reach back for the puck, it allows Beniers to get to that puck first and force it up along the boards to Borgen, who then gets it up to Eberle. Eberle skates it down the ice through the neutral zone into the offensive end, circles around the Avalanche net, and, well, I'll let the live reaction take it from here. Eberle circles around, shot, scores! Tye Kartye! Tye Kartye! Let's go! First NHL goal! He does it! Woo! Keep the puck. Tye Kartye gets his first NHL goal in his first NHL game in Game 5 of the first round of the playoffs. So, Kartye in his first NHL game gives the Kraken back the lead with what could have been the game-winning goal for his first NHL goal in his first game. His parents in the stands elated by the goal. If you go back and watch the replay, there's a lady behind them that cracked me up after the fact, as she's clearly cheering for the Avalanche, even though she just has like a black and white jacket on. But as Kartye's parents jump up in excitement, she's just back there going, oh. Anyway, it doesn't end up being the game winner, but still a massive difference-making goal here for Kartye in his first NHL game, who even outside of this, again, had a fantastic game and very nearly ends up getting another point later on this game, as we'll get to in the third period. But he gets that feed from Eberle and makes it count. Huge moment for him. And once again, just to go back to how this whole thing started in the Kraken end, As we look at the screenshot of Kartye's shot here on the feed from Eberle, if you see that Avalanche player here right up by Kartye that almost lifts his stick before he can get this shot off, and if he does lift the stick, the shot never gets off, and the Kraken never get this 2-1 lead, or at least don't on this play from Kartye. That is JT Compher, who is coming in off of a change as Nathan MacKinnon went to the bench. Which, the reason that Compher is late here, and the only reason that Kartye gets this shot off, is that after the puck gets past MacKinnon, he slams his stick into the boards, yelling at the official, and then is slow to get to the bench because he's yelling backwards at the official all the way to it. If he just, even past throwing his hands up in the air and letting Beniers get the puck past him, if he just turns around and gets back to the bench for his change, Compher gets back in time to break up this shot, and the game is still tied. Plus, for what it's worth, even if you do think this was a missed tripping call on Borgen against MacKinnon here, the second time that Borgen and MacKinnon came together in a play that resulted in Avalanche fans wanting a tripping call on Borgen. But aside from that, even if you think that was a missed call, MacKinnon also gets away with not getting a unsportsmanlike conduct here as he slams his stick against the board, yelling at the official. Almost any other time, especially in the regular season, and certainly any other player that isn't a superstar, that's very likely an unsportsmanlike call, and maybe the only reason that it doesn't get called is because the ref knows that he let a borderline one go. Either way, though, the result in the end is a 2-1 Kraken lead, and although I wasn't expecting it to happen, one of the main things that I thought would have been fun to come out of this game does with Kartye getting his first NHL goal in his first NHL game in the playoff, which it turns out is a feat that, again, first goal in first NHL game in the playoffs. Only 7 other NHL players in the history of the league had ever done that. And ironically, the last one to do it is Cale Makar, the reason that Kartye's in the lineup in the first place. From here, the rest of the second period is pretty back and forth. The Kraken, I'm pretty sure, still do get the advantage in shots on goal, but both teams are getting their chances in the offensive end, and honestly, none of the shots are particularly dangerous. Right up until at the end of another period, just like at the end of the first, once again, it's a Kraken player to the box, though this time, if you want to complain about the missed calls against Avalanche players, if you're an Avalanche fan, you have to admit that this slashing call against MacKinnon from Tolvanen that gets Tolvanen put in the box at the end of the second is one of the softest calls that we've seen this entire playoffs. As MacKinnon breaks his stick, so he throws it to the ground and then gives Tolvanen a healthy shove while Tolvanen's trying to play the puck. Fair enough, but then in response, Tolvanen just kind of lightly taps MacKinnon on the front of his shorts as he's skating away to rejoin the play. Somehow, the refs decide that that is a penalty for slashing. Tolvanen goes to the box, and once again, the Avalanche are going to finish the period with a minute of power play and start the next one with a minute. Fortunately, though, for the Kraken, thanks in large part to some fantastic soccer skills showed off by Alex Wennberg, as he loses his stick here in the part that ends the second period. So it's basically a 3.5v5 for the power play on the Avs. But Wennberg, even without a stick, gets up to the puck, kicks it once up into the corner trying to clear it. It is cut off in the corner, but Wennberg, who still needs a stick, and his bench is all the way through that puck on the far end, just skates right through the guy that held the blue line, kicks it off of his stick back out into the neutral zone, and then as he continues towards the Kraken bench, kicks it a third time all the way down into the corner, into the Avalanche end, killing off a bunch of time with those 3 kicks of the puck. And, well, I'd have to say that that inspired the Sounders to eventually end up winning their game in the final minute of stoppage time. 5-4, I think, is what the win was. Honestly, I wouldn't even have known that if it wasn't pointed out to me by somebody in the chat of the live stream, so thanks for that. But Wennberg making his case to join the Sounders after the Kraken playoff run comes to an end, however and whenever that happens. Thanks to that, though, and a couple of nice saves from Grubauer right in the final seconds of the second period, the Kraken are able to kill off this penalty, even the remaining part of it, to start the third. And then not long after they do, they get right back down into the Avalanche end after another couple saves by Grubauer right as the power play comes to an end, actually, for the Avalanche. So Grubauer coming up big for the Kraken at both ends of this intermission, coming into the third with the lead, which, as we know, the Kraken have been almost unbeatable with a lead coming into a third period. Anyway, like I said, following those 2 Grubauer saves, following the Avalanche power play being successfully killed off by the Kraken for a second time this game, both teams going 0 for 2 on the power play, so even after they finally started getting some special teams goals in the games in Seattle. No more of that back in Colorado. The Kraken get right back down the ice and trying to extend this lead are eventually able to make it happen as Gord fights a puck away from 3 Avalanche players along the board, gets it out to Tolvanen. Tolvanen up to Susie. Susie rims it back down around for Bjorkstrand, who puts it right back the other way for Susie. Up in the corner, Susie skates it out a few feet from the boards, but still pretty much on the blue line before firing off a shot, and it's into the back of the net to give the Kraken the 3-1 lead as it's tipped in by Yanni Gord out in front, who's shielding, I think it was Byram, who's the two of them have had their issues throughout this series. Byram and Gord, even from game 1, have been chippy towards each other. But he's shielding Byram off with one hand, got his stick in the other, and with one hand on the stick is able to get the blade of his stick on it enough to tip it in, I think off of the bar, into the net to give the Kraken the 2-goal lead early on here in the third. Hopefully you didn't get too carried away celebrating this scored goal though, as the Kraken right off the faceoff are right back into the offensive end, and it's Tye Kartye with a beautiful pass, backhand, no look through the legs of a defender who's on top of him, out to Beniers in front of the net, and Beniers gets robbed by Georgiev. And even at that, a defender runs into Georgiev, who is trying to break up Beniers' shot, and nearly pushes Georgiev and the puck into the net. There isn't a clear enough look from any camera angle for them to overturn the no-goal call on the ice, so we'll never know whether it really did go in. Honestly, I think it was probably the right call that Georgiev does keep this out. Still, it's almost 4-1 Kraken, just like that, off of another beautiful play from the first game player in Kartye. And it also is a bummer that we didn't end up getting the scoring combination of AHL Rookie of the Year to NHL Rookie of the Year in one play. But who knows, maybe we'll get it in the following couple of games in the series, assuming McCann doesn't come back. Beyond this save here from Georgiev, though, and then another really nice one he makes to rob a backhanded shot from Tolvanen on a great setup from Bjorkstrand. That one actually a glove save, so even though the glove has been a tough spot for Georgiev throughout this series, definitely gets Tolvanen with the glove on that one. Outside of those two, though, it's, well, the puck spends most of its time down in the Kraken end of the ice throughout the rest of this third period. The Kraken get a couple of rushes because the Avalanche are so willing to take risks offensively, which they need to get back in this game, which does allow a 2-on-1 for Tolvanen and Bjorkstrand, and then a breakaway for Bjorkstrand. Neither one of those end up scoring, as Bjorkstrand isn't quite able to get a clean handle on the puck on the 2-on-1, and then just puts the backhand shot wide on the breakaway. Either way, the rest of this third period was definitely nerve-wracking from a Kraken fan standpoint, as the Avalanche, again, are just holding it into the offensive end. However, it does have to be said for the Kraken defensively. Well, one, this may have been somewhat by design. I mean, sure, you'd like to score a couple more goals, but the Kraken at this point with the 2-goal lead are definitely playing more defense first and trying to kill off time on that clock and take chances if they're given to them, but not take any risks that could end up in their net back the other way. Meanwhile, the Avalanche, while they're getting a lot of zone time in the offensive end, are just not able to get the puck to the inside, as the Kraken are keeping everything to the outside and shot blocking like mad. There were a number of guys, I mean, Alexiak took one to the inside of the knee, Schwartz took one to the inside of the calf, Beniers, I think, got hit by one at some point. It was a battle out for them, and there's going to be some bruises that they're going to be feeling on the plane ride back. But they battled through it, kept most of the pucks from getting to Grubauer in the first place, and any that did, Grubauer was able to see without too much traffic in front of him and make those saves. And even on top of that, when they were able to get the puck out, they were not making it particularly easy on the Avalanche to even get through the neutral zone cleanly and into the offensive end in the first place. So just fantastic defense from the Kraken to limit any danger on shots, even if there were a number of shots that make the shots on goal pretty even by the end of it, which does eventually force the Avalanche to go empty net with about 4 minutes left, I think. Something like that. And unfortunately, once they do go empty net, with that sixth guy out on the ice, it does not take them very long to get to within one. And it comes off of, I mean, I said that Grubauer doesn't make any more mistakes throughout this game after handing Rantanen, or I guess it's McKinnon's goal, but basically Rantanen that goal on the first one. This one that gets past him is not on Grubauer whatsoever. This is just luck and a couple of bounces that end up past him, as a shot from up by the blue line by Evan Rodriguez goes off of the stick of Wemberg, then off of the logo on the front of the jersey of Alexiak and into the top corner of the net past Grubauer. It's just a ping pong off of Kraken players that ends up in the back of the net and makes the last 3.5 minutes of this game very nerve-wracking. The Kraken do get one more offensive press right after this goal, trying to respond and regain that 2-goal lead, which also serves to force Georgiev to stay in his net until about the 2.5 to 2 minute mark, when he eventually goes back to the bench again in a face-off in the Kraken end. And the Kraken do get a couple of chances, one almost immediately on the empty net, as Yanni Gourde fires off the shot, but it goes right into the gut of Evan Rodriguez, who, even though he's a forward, was playing in a defensive role quite a bit here towards the end with, he's playing quarterback there with the 6-on-5, and then is the one guy back between the goal and Gourde's shot, which would have been his second of the game. Later on, Wennberg does also get a chance at the empty net. There's a few guys between him and the net, so it's definitely not a clear, wide open shot that he has. But being that it's Alex Wennberg, he just keeps handling the puck, looking for someone to pass it to so they can shoot at the empty net, which ends up getting broken up and right back down the other end, where the Avalanche get a couple more shots. Fortunately, the Kraken do end up killing this off, especially because if the Avalanche had tied it here, I don't know if Wennberg would have ever heard the end of not shooting at the empty net here. The Kraken hold on and win this game 3-2 to take the 3-2 series lead and have a chance to end the series in Seattle in Game 6 at home. When it comes to big takeaways from this game for me, one, obviously, and we'll get to it a little bit more when we get to 3 stars, is the performance of Tye Kartye. Second one, the Kraken defensively. This was probably their best defensive outing in this series so far. Again, tons of shots blocked. Incredible job of keeping chances to the outside. And the only 2 goals they let in are the horrible mistake by Grubauer. It is what it is. Grubauer basically put that one in the net himself. And then the unfortunate couple of bounces that just happened to go off 2 Kraken players into the net. Otherwise, they really didn't give the Avalanche much to work with, and they capitalized on some chances the other way. So even though in a lot of ways, statistically, this game looks pretty even, and Avalanche, again, had plenty of time in the offensive end, shots on goal are pretty even. Avalanche even win fairly handily once again in the faceoff circle, though even there, the Kraken did a pretty good job of either winning the ones that they had in their end of the ice, or at the very least looked like they had a plan for when the Avalanche won faceoffs in the Kraken end. In fact, one in particular, the Avalanche looked like they had a play set up for the win faceoff. They win that faceoff, but the Kraken just went straight through the faceoff circle to muddy up that play and eventually just got the puck out before the Avalanche could even get a shot on goal. So it seems like they're a little bit more prepared for those lost faceoffs in their end. And if they can play this way defensively in Game 6, there's a very good chance that we're headed to the second round without even getting to 7. I should also probably mention that the physical aspect of this game, honestly, I was expecting it to be kind of pick up where we left off with Game 4, the most physical game of the series, obviously spurred on by what happened between Makar and McCann. But it took quite a while to get there, really up until the third period before some big hits started getting laid. And most of those big hits were in the favor of the Kraken. Soucy laid a guy on his butt. Dunn did the same a little bit later on. And the Kraken, even though they get, I think, out-hit 39-41 in this game, I'd say they got the better as far as quality of hits are concerned. Anyway, hits are a very subjective stat, and obviously quality of hits would be subjective as well, so you can't read into that too much. But while I think the Avalanche have gotten the better of maybe those hits throughout the course of the series as a whole, the Kraken, I think, did a better job in this game there. That having been said, though, well, again, hits are very subjective, and there's no way around that. They're different arena to arena, official score to official score. It's hard to ignore that the guy that's led the Kraken in hits in both of the last 2 games has been Eeli Tolvanen with 8 in the franchise record 52 hits in Game 4, and then 9 easily leading the Kraken here in Game 5. So 17 hits for just Tolvanen between these 2 games. And while I wouldn't say any of the hits were decleating, if you will, like Soucy's or Dunn in this game, or, Dunn got decleated earlier on in the series by the much smaller Evan Rodriguez. It has been a very strong forecheck and backcheck performance by that entire third line, and obviously that seems to be being led by Eeli Tolvanen, though both Gourde and Bjorkstrand are getting their fair share. Still, I thought Tolvanen in particular is worth shouting out here, especially with that line, and he getting that matchup with Makar and his line from the Avalanche whenever the Kraken can make that matchup happen. As we get to the Kraken 3 stars, though, Tolvanen isn't going to be one of them, but as we go back to that first takeaway, my first star in this game is Tye Kartye with that fantastic performance. Was he all in all the best and most impactful Kraken player out on the ice in this game? No, I think that's probably the guy that I'm going to give the second star to, and we'll get to him in a second. But to come in, have your first NHL game be game 5 of the first round in a tied series in your team's first ever playoff appearance, and then to look like you've belonged from the beginning, not look like just some guy that's thrown in because we needed someone due to an injury. It's just an absolutely incredible performance from him. Again, looked like he had been with that line, maybe not necessarily from the start of the season, but looked like he'd been playing with Beniers and Eberle for quite a while. Even had a few hits himself. Only gets credited for 3, but I think he could have had a few more. Threw his body around a bit in this game. Obviously has his first NHL goal that we already talked about, and easily could have had an assist on that setup he had for Beniers if Beniers hadn't gotten robbed by Georgiev. So I think it should be safe to say that we're going to be seeing more of Kartye here in the next couple of games, assuming that McCann isn't going to be back in this series, which I think is probably more likely than not, certainly at least for Game 6. We'll see about Game 7 if that's even necessary. But Kartye I would expect to see playing again for the Kraken at home. And if anything's going to change, it wouldn't be that he's out of the lineup. It might be that he's in the lineup more, as his minutes were a bit sheltered here. Obviously, he gets to play with Beniers and Eberle on what's, at least on paper, the first line for the Kraken, even with the geeky line being, well, I guess not geeky, it's more the Wemberg line performing the best so far in this series. Either way, he's up there on one of the top lines for the Kraken. And yeah, he was going every other shift with Tanev there on the wing, but the minutes he was out there, sheltered or not, he was playing very well. My second star then, and again, the guy that honestly I think made the biggest difference for the Kraken in this game, all things considered. He does end up getting on the score sheet with 1 assist, but he isn't one of the goal scorers. It's Oliver Bjorkstrand, who had a fantastic night. And even outside of his offensive contributions, he was, I don't know what else to say than absolutely amazing in the defensive end for the Kraken, breaking up a number of plays. I don't know how many takeaways he had in this game. I could probably look it up, but it's going to be more than whatever the official stat said is. Again, that can be somewhat subjective. But Bjorkstrand was a monster on the ice for the Kraken, especially on the back check. And again, with that line drawing the majority of the time against the top line for the Avalanche, those are very important minutes and very important defensive end plays for Bjorkstrand in that line to be making. Yanni Gourde also had a fantastic game. He and Tolvanen easily could end up getting stars here, but I'm going to have both of them be honorable mentions, as my third star is going to end up going to Morgan Geekie. He gets the Kraken on the board and now he's one of 2 multi-goal scorers for the Kraken in this series. I suppose as far as takeaways go for the series as a whole so far, the Kraken with 18 goals in the series now have 15 different goal scorers. Meanwhile, the Avalanche, I think I saw the stat that their bottom 6 only has 1 point in this series so far. So the depth so far for the Kraken is making the difference in this series. And hopefully that can just continue as 2 more guys in Kartye and Gourde pick up their first tier. For Geekie, though, he honestly, outside of Schwartz, I think might be certainly one of the MVPs of the series. I'd probably, if I had to pick stars of the series so far, I would go Schwartz, Grubauer, and then probably Geekie, which feels bad to leave out anybody on that Gourde line considering what they've contributed defensively and even offensively here in the last couple of games, or this game in particular. Either way, this has been a great series for a lot of guys, and Geekie, I think, has really found a home there on that wing of the second line, even if he's only there because of the Burakovsky injury. Oh, one more thing I did want to mention here, and actually meant to mention earlier on when I was talking about Kartye. The downside of Kartye being up with the Kraken is that it means he can't be with the AHL affiliate Coachella Valley Firebirds, as they're in the second round against, funnily enough, the Colorado Eagles, who are the Avalanche's AHL affiliate. So Makar's hit on McCann, taking McCann away from the Kraken, one of their best players, as well as taking one of the best players effectively away from the Firebirds, with Kartye coming up to the Kraken in that spot, while the Avalanche are playing Seattle's affiliate in the AHL playoffs in the second round. Anyway, even without Kartye, the Firebirds won game 1 of that series 6-2. So even with that downside of both teams missing one of their best players, they both end up winning against Colorado teams and get important playoff victories. Now, though, feel free to let me know what you think down in the comment section of this game. If you were joined for the stream, thank you very much for joining for the stream, and we'll have at least one more of those. We're guaranteed the Game 7 stream, and obviously we're hoping that that Game 7 stream isn't necessary and we'll get streams in the second round instead. Other than that, though, again, thoughts in the comment section. If you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below to help support the channel. And until next time, Game 6 and a chance to close it out at home. Stay safe out there. Be good to each other. God bless and go Kraken!